To this day, My Pokémon Ranch remains one of my favorite Pokémon titles, an unpopular opinion at its release considering that most reviewers at the time hated this game. For 1,000 Wii points, which roughly translates to $10 US, the game received terrible scores across the board, citing a lack of gameplay, little to do without outside assistance from other games, and IGN even calling it the ugliest Pokémon game out there. The main gameplay loop of My Pokémon Ranch consists of depositing Pokémon from Diamond or Pearl in order to fulfill the caretaker Haley's dream of a ranch filled with all sorts of Pokémon, after which you can watch your Pokémon in the ranch interacting with each other. To help you find new Pokémon, Haley will evaluate your Pokédex and request Pokémon that you haven't caught yet, progressing through the ones available in the main story before moving on to post-game targets, version exclusives, and even legendary and at the time transfer exclusive Pokémon. Haley is surprisingly knowledgeable as well, and has detailed instructions on where to catch each Pokémon. In the late 2000s, this level of knowledge was usually reserved for strategy guides, making Haley's instructions extremely useful for completing your Pokédex in an age where access to fan wikis wasn't a given. Once her requests are complete, Haley may offer to trade one of her own Pokémon with the player if she has one of her tradable Pokémon from the Pokémon that she's brought at the beginning of each day. Haley's trade Pokémon all know moves they only learn via breeding or TMs, and the ones she obtained via eggs all have a special met location of Lovely Place. Her Shroomish is also entirely impossible to replicate in Generation 4, as it has a Safari Ball while knowing the egg move False Swipe, which Shroomish and Breloom strangely don't learn from the TM in these games. These trades are often the main reason people even look into this game. At 250 Pokémon deposited, she'll bring a Fione and offer to trade it for a Leafeon. This Fione is also impossible to replicate, being the only place to obtain Cherish Ball Fione in the entire series. At 999 Pokémon deposited, she will bring her famous Mew that knows Hypnosis, which is otherwise only obtainable with the Mew Tutor in XD Gale of Darkness, and trade it for an egg. But this game is so much more than what you can take with you to the rest of the series. I'd argue this is still one of, if not the most detailed Pokémon game in the entire franchise. Not in terms of models, though this was where the developers Umbrella first showed off what has now become known as the Rumble style of Pokémon models. But rather, this game has incredible attention to detail with the way different Pokémon interact with Miis and each other, showcasing a genuine care for the Pokédex that no other Pokémon game has matched since. And even more behaviors were added with the Platinum Compatibility update. This video will serve as a showcase for all the unique behaviors I've managed to spot within this game, and honestly, I'm not convinced that I've found them all. And if you end up wishing that you could watch My Pokémon Ranch after this video but missed your window to buy it before the Wii Shop closure, I have a Twitch channel called Our Pokémon Ranch that runs 24/7 anytime you need some cozy second monitor Pokémon Aquarium action. Now on to all the animations and behaviors that I think make this game one of the most detailed Pokémon games out there. Let's start with the broad behaviors that apply to almost every Pokémon and work our way down. In general, Pokémon tend to primarily prefer the company of Pokémon of their own evolutionary family and then Pokémon of their own type. Pokémon will also run from types that they're weak against, causing bubbles to slowly form around the ranch of Pokémon that are of similar types. If a Pokémon has maximum friendship when deposited, however, it will prefer to spend its time staying near whichever Mii is assigned as its caretaker. Types also dictate which attacks a Pokémon will use on the ranch. Certain toys will also have associated types, affecting which types like to play with them. Each Pokemon has its own speed, independent of its actual speed stat. For example, Raikou runs much faster than most Pokemon, while a Pokemon like Ditto very slowly slides its way across the ranch. A large set of Pokemon have no speed at all. These Pokemon will stay perfectly still unless they do an animation that causes them to move. Some Pokemon will also only move while it's nighttime, namely Cacturne and Wobbuffet in accordance with their Pokédex entries. Speaking of the day-night cycle of the ranch, there are 3 sleep cycles most Pokemon can have. Most will be awake while it's day and become sleepy at night. Certain nocturnal Pokemon will have the opposite happen, with a message popping up noting that they are more energetic. A small group of Pokemon are sleepy all the time. One Pokemon, Vigoroth, stays awake day and night. The day-night cycle also affects Cherrim, transforming between sunshine and overcast forms depending on the time of day. On the topic of behaviors only a few Pokemon have, these next categories are only performed by a handful of specific species when the camera is focused on them. First up, we have friendly Pokemon, including Togetic, Shuppet, Swablu, and Drifloon. These Pokemon can all fly, and prefer to spend their time hovering near Miis, even those that aren't their caretakers. Mankey, Primeape, Gyarados, and Mewtwo will almost always take the opportunity to attack nearby Pokemon and Miis, with an extra message saying that it looks like they want to run wild. Kirlia and Ludicolo will stop to dance, causing Miis and other Pokemon to join in. Hitmontop and Baltoy will begin to spin before taking off and knocking over any Pokemon that they hit. Probopass will occasionally drop to the ground and draw in nearby Steel types and Miis with its magnetism. Diglett and Dugtrio can burrow under the ground, allowing them to escape under the fence that normally surrounds the ranch. Gloom, Coughing, Wheezing, Grimer, Muck, Stunky, and Skuntank will occasionally emit a cloud of stinky yellow gas, scaring everyone away. Azurill, Baneri, and Lopunny will bounce around in large arcs. Togepi and Spheal will periodically stop and roll forwards. Graveler does a similar roll, but it will knock away anything that it collides with. Magikarp, Hoppip, Igglybuff, and Spoink will do a couple bounces in place, sometimes resulting in a massive bounce that takes them high above the ranch. Poliwhirl and Slackoth will sometimes put everything near them to sleep. Shelder will run up behind a nearby Slowpoke and pretend like they're going to bite its tail, scaring the Slowpoke into running. Krabby and Kingler will sometimes do a crab walk sideways. Mime Jr. can choose a nearby Mii and begin copying their movement. Lapras will approach Miis and give them a ride on its back. All Pokemon and Miis can ride on Pokemon, but Lapras specifically has a special animation of it backing up towards the Mii to offer a ride. Jigglypuff will sing its iconic Jigglypuff song and put everything nearby to sleep. Slowpoke will occasionally have a rock ball on its head, but will take several seconds to register that anything has happened. While all flying Pokémon can attempt to carry Miis, Drifblim will immediately pick up and carry them when given the opportunity. Munchlax will run to its caretaker and beg for treats. Unlike most Pokémon, after treats have been provided, Munchlax will immediately ask for more as long as the Mii is still around to give them. Drowsy and Hypno will use Hypnosis to put nearby Pokémon and Miis to sleep. Cubone will run away from all Pokémon as though it were weak to their type, which winds up making it isolated and lonely. Ditto has the ability to transform into other Pokémon. Psyduck will occasionally get headaches. Blissey is almost always happy, and will put nearby Miis in a good mood. Porygon Z will sometimes glitch out and do whatever this is. Dusknoir will go up to nearby Miis and put them into a trance before leading them around the ranch. Unlike most flying Pokémon which will only carry Miis, Staraptor can pick up small Pokémon and fly them around in its talons. Miis will be inclined to check up on nearby eggs. While stationary, eggs can interact with nearby Pokémon and Miis, and can even participate in certain event cutscenes. Ghastly will haunt nearby Miis, staying out of sight while the Mii walks and looks around for them. Tauros will go on a rampage, stampeding through anything in its path. Spiritomb and Gengar will often appear sad, leading to Miis checking in on them. This is actually a trick and will result in any nearby Miis being temporarily cursed. Luvdisc will emit hearts, as will any nearby Mii who sees it. Ninjask will often get the urge to ninja dash from place to place, leaving trails of smoke. Bayleaf will use its spice-scented neck buds to invigorate nearby Miis. Skitty can get distracted by its own tail and chase it in circles. Swablu will seek out nearby Miis in order to perch on their head like a hat. At night, Clefairy will use its wings to float as if it were in low gravity. Cranidos and Rampardos will charge headfirst into nearby Pokémon to headbutt them. When it's not sleeping, Abra will begin teleporting to random nearby spots. Voltorb and Electrode can explode. Rattata will occasionally begin scouting for food, before trekking up to its caretaker for some treats. Whismur, Loudred, and Exploud will begin causing uproars by crying repeatedly. Omanite and Omastar will sometimes move by darting backwards. Jinx will attempt to speak to nearby Miis, who will attempt to understand what she's saying. And with that, those are all the unique behaviors I could find in my Pokémon Ranch so far. Even after catching and depositing an entire Generation 4 living dex, I'm not convinced that I've managed to see all of these. Perhaps one day when we know more about this game, we'll discover even more hidden details stashed away in this unassuming WiiWare title. But until then, thanks for listening to me gush about my favorite Pokémon game, and thanks for watching.